Hey everybody, Craig Harbauer here. Wanted to take a minute to just set this video series up, so put it in perspective, so to speak. What I'm trying to do is answer the question, well, I'm going to begin my lean journey. I know I need to. Where do I start? Right? And this series of videos is going to be exactly that. In the big picture, everything starts with the current state. The current state involves, of course, your customers, your customer demand, all of that, which is really the subject of the first few videos. Then after that, we're going to get in the walls of the factory, and we're going to analyze everything that's going on, with regard to information flow, material flow, and people flow. So stick with us. It's going to be a fun ride. And if you have any questions, or if this content sparks your interest, or you want to interact, or you need more information, just leave a comment, and I'd be happy to respond and get a dialogue going. So enjoy. If you have any questions, let me know. Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome to the channel. Get loads of questions about creating flow in factories, and I spend a lot of time doing it. And the question that comes up the most, and I think many of you guys have experienced this as well, is, well, where do I start? Where do I get going? And I can say now, after 30 years of being in manufacturing, 20 years of doing lean full time, the most important place to start when you want to create flow in your factory is you have to start with the demand. You have to start with the customers. You have to understand thoroughly what the demand picture looks like for that factory, because everything else is going to be subordinate to that. You might have great ideas on how to design your factory, and you might want to go run out and put 3 supermarkets in place because you read it in some book somewhere. But without thoroughly understanding demand, all of it could be completely wasted. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with analyzing the customer demand. All right, so it's day one. Day one, either you're just got hired, you build yourself as a lean guy, you came in on the first day, and you got to know what to do, right? Maybe you're a consultant. Maybe it's your first day with a new client. You go through the shop tour, you see the floor. Then what do you start asking for? What do you need to look at? The most important thing you can look at, and the most important thing that you have to understand about this project is, what does the demand look like? What are you selling? What's coming out of there, right? And how much and at what rate, and what significantly, or most importantly, what is the variability of the demand, as think of it as waves, right, crashing against the factory. So here we are, day one. You need to know, I need to ask for that demand data. Now, typically this will be dumped out of their ERP system for you. It's going to be a mess. How much do you ask for? Do you ask for a week, month, 3 months, 90 days? All of that depends. Now, typically, you're going to want a year. You're going to want a full year of data. Typically, all right. If we're talking about a mature business that, it's a factory that's been selling products for years. Maybe, they're in automotive and they've been supplying, they're a tier 1 supplier. You're going to definitely, in that case, want a year's worth of history, if not more. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The decision on how much data you ask for is dependent upon the variability over the year, seasonality, things like that. If you're in consumer goods, right, you'll have seasonality. It could be a back to school season. It could be a holiday season, holiday shopping. There's a number of different factors that can come into play. But you're going to need that full picture of all the cycles. So in the beginning, you want to start asking the questions about the demand as, hey, what kind of variability are we looking at over the year? Do we have busy seasons? Do we have sometimes of the year that sometimes of the months that are more busier than others, right? Um, you know, we've seen it all, right? You've gone into companies that are publicly traded and you've seen that effect where, wow, just towards the end of the quarter, shipping and invoices go way up. And then, of course, it drops down again in the beginning of the next quarter. You'll also see that hockey stick, right? We call it the hockey stick. You'll also see that at the ends of some months in a lot of different companies because they want to hit their monthly targets. Not suggesting that this happens in anyone that I've ever worked with. But that said, there have been situations where orders may get pulled in from the next month to make this month look good, right? Robbing Peter to pay Paul. It happens. It's awful, but it happens. So you need to get as much demand data as you can in order to capture accurately all of the seasonal variability that might exist. Of course, the monthly variability, of course, the quarterly variability. So that's why I'm saying you don't know your demand until you have at least a year, right? And you have to look at it that way. So there's more to doing this than just about let's calculate attack time. And we're going to get into that in subsequent parts to this series. So day one, you get the tour, you understand what's going on the floor, you walk the floor backwards, hopefully, you guys know that. You always start with the shipping dock, and then you walk upstream, right? So you can get a feel for this is the product, and then you kind of see it deconstructed as you walk through the factory. It's much easier to walk backwards in a value stream and understand what's going on than it is to walk forwards. So then you get your demand data, and it's going to be a big fat dump, right? You're going to have to sort it out in JDE, or sort it out from whatever ERP system that gave it to you. And you're going to have to look at a lot of different things to make sure that when you're analyzing this data, that you're looking at it the right way. And here's a couple of pitfalls and a couple of problems that I seem to run into pretty regularly. A lot of times you'll ask for this transactional data, and they'll give you that. They'll say, oh, well, in our system, we transact to this status, and that status is when the product is completed. And so we know it's done. And that's then they'll run a report for you that says, okay, I transacted these products on these dates and times into this status, and that's when the product is finished. That may not be customer demand. You need to get as close to the customer as possible, and that you need to have invoiced sales data, right? Now, invoiced sales data can still be heavily influenced by the factory itself. So it may not be a true picture of demand, but with regard to the data that you're collecting, that's the truest picture you're probably gonna get, right? So try to get 1 year's worth of invoiced sales data, right? Now, let's say this particular company has a huge pile of back orders, right? Let's say they sell, 10,000 widgets a day, but they can only get around 80% of them out the door and 20% go on back order all the time, right? So throughout that day, or any given day on that data that you have, they're going to be shipping orders on time, and they might be shipping 20% of their orders late for an order that, was due a week prior, 2 weeks, 3 weeks prior. And that becomes that situation where now you have the variability of the factory influencing and impacting the picture of the demand that you're going to be drawing, if you will, right, and analyzing. So be careful of that and be aware of that. If your customer or if your factory is in a situation where they have lots of back orders, or like today where supply chains are all screwed up, they have late shipments constantly, you have to just be aware that the invoice sales data that you're going to analyze is going to be influenced by the variability of the factory. Now, that could mean a couple of different things, right? Like, as an example, let's say it was difficult to get in a raw material, right? So what happens in that case? Well, the raw materials don't come in, and the planning department places orders as orders for their finished products are growing. They're ordering from a supplier who is having a lot of difficulty supplying. Well, then you'll have this accumulation of orders from their customers over time. And then, boom, that raw material comes in. All the machines get changed over because they want to flush out those back orders. And over the course of, let's say, 2 or 3 days, suddenly you'll have a huge shipment of a certain family of products. Well, that's going to show up in your demand analysis, right? That's going to show up in your invoiced sales analysis. So you have to be aware of those things and filter them, or at least be able to take them into account. And when you're doing the analysis, you can choose to eliminate certain data points if you'd like. But the goal of the initial analysis is always to understand what is the variability, true variability of my customer. If I were to be able to ship to customer orders on time, all the time, what would that variability look like? So how do we take the next step, right? So you've downloaded a year's worth of invoice sales data. However, you know that data is influenced heavily by the ability of this particular customer or factory to ship. So we have that situation going on. The next thing you want to download are booked sales. What do I mean by booked sales? Bookings, right? So that's customer ordering order entries, right? So every time the customer orders, an order is placed through customer service. You have an order entry date and a customer request date, let's say. A great place to determine variability of demand is to look at bookings and look at actual sales data, not ship data, but you do need both, right? So you do your first analysis. You have 1 year's worth of sales data. You're plotting it, right? You're looking at mins and maxes. You're looking at it by day. You can look at it by week. You can look at it by month, right? You've got to make that pivot table, and you've got to be able to look at it and slice it and dice it in every way possible on invoice sales. Then you take your booked sales, right? So that's all the orders that are being entered into the system, right? I'm going to enter this order, enter this order, enter this order. That is also going to give you another picture of customer demand variability, and to a certain extent, demand rate as well, right? You want to look at both of those things. You need both pictures. Invoice sales, which is basically a combination of your customer demand, as well as booked sales, which is more purely a representation of the demand rate and of the demand variability. So that said, booked sales isn't perfect either, right? The question could be, well, Craig, why don't you just look at booked sales then? Because that what can happen in the case of booked sales is, let's say a customer places 6 orders with different ship dates. Or they place a blanket order, right? So they have, I'm going to give you an open PO for 100,000 units. We've seen stuff like that. Booked sales can be influenced by customers ordering product, let's say, very early. So a sale might be booked on January 3rd, but it's not going to ship until March 15th, and then again on June 15th, and then again on April 15th, right? So March, June, and July, let's say. So you can't only look at one or the other. You need to look at them both, right? And there's no absolutes here, right? There's no math that you can do that says, well, I have now calculated demand variability perfectly. It doesn't exist. So you need both pieces of the puzzle. Get a year's worth of customer sales, invoice sales data, and get a year's worth of book data. Pivot table, the whole thing, right? And just look at it all together right now, right? In subsequent videos, we're going to get around to dividing all that data up and creating families and SKUs and how to look at it and all of that, right? But right now, you want to start with that raw data. It's the most important piece of information. The more time we spend analyzing and thoroughly understanding demand, the better our designs and the decisions are going to be with regard to what we're going to do in the factory to make it more efficient. And the whole point of what we're doing is to make money. It's not to make ourselves look more efficient on the floor. So in order for us to make money, every single decision that we make has to be oriented towards the customer and selling more product when the customer wants it quicker, right? But at this point, when you spend several hours getting that data and understanding it, one of the things I've realized is, by and large, there are very few people working within that company that have a complete picture like you're about to have once you understand that data. Most people end up being shocked and surprised that, well, holy cow, 80% of our sales is coming from 15% of our SKUs? I didn't know that, right? And we're going to get into all of that, but the more time you spend understanding that data and that you can speak to that data when you're setting your strategy overall, the more powerful it is. Because I'm telling you right now, there are loads and loads of assumptions being made about that data. Everybody at all the different positions in your organization thinks they know the demand data, and nobody has a complete picture. So the first thing you're going to do is get that complete picture. All right, that was a lot of information in about 15 minutes. So if you want any more information or clarifications, or you want to get into a dialogue about this stuff, don't forget, leave a comment below. Also, like and subscribe so that you'll be notified of the next video, which should be coming out very soon. We're going to continue diving into the customer demand data. There's a lot more we have to get done. We just stood at a very high level right now. So look out for that coming very shortly. And remember, don't just be a 5S'er. Create flow.